Okay, so meditation is over. Hopefully, we're feeling relaxed, at peace. I forgot to mention, please make sure your phone is on airplane mode before you begin. You don't want it ringing right in the middle of everything. Now, I'd like to mention that after the meditation is the time for question answering. And so if you have a question of any kind, please, well, not of any kind, I don't want to help you finding a plumber, but anything related to the Natural Right Sangha, please send it to me at mark@naturalrightsangha.org. I'd be happy to answer it for you either in a meeting or in a special video like the ones we already have here on the precepts and the practices and the introduction, which is a kind of welcome. And I'll also email you saying, hey, your answer is coming in this presentation or this whatever, okay, this meeting or this production, okay, and so you're sure to see it. Well, hopefully you're looking at everything, of course, but just to make sure, I'll send that to you. Now, personal questions, of course, are kept totally confidential. And as far as I'm concerned, we have that relationship where I keep everything private and secret, um, according to what the church has done with people in the confessional booth for hundreds of years. And I would follow those mandates, guidelines very strictly. So everything, so you're okay. Now, besides, one of the precepts is not to gossip or slander or lie. So, and I keep that one pretty damn strictly. Now, at least I better, huh? Now, one question that has come in is about the four immeasurables. We do them at the end of our meetings, and I'd like to go over them a little bit with you. So the first of the four is, let's use you, okay? Instead of I, let's use you. May you have happiness and all the causes of happiness. Okay, that's great. Sounds good. Now, it's kind of sneaky though, isn't it? Because, wait, um, somewhere along the line, I've heard that, if you chase happiness and you try to grab onto this happiness, that's an attachment. And once you get attached, then it's bound to cause pain. So, how do you do that? Yeah, exactly. How do you do that? Well, what they mean by happiness here is the ananda that we talk about in the practices and we talk about in many of our other videos on this YouTube channel. We have ananda on our mind. And ananda is from Sat Chit Ananda, being truth, or truth being bliss, okay? Or truth consciousness bliss, excuse me. Sorry, I'm screwing up my bit. I'm thinking too much. Turn off the brain here in a way. But Ananda is often translated as bliss. It's not bliss in the blissful type of way that we normally consider bliss, or at least that I do. It's not this happy, jumping around, joyful type thing. Ananda is actually more like the peace that surpasses all understanding that is talked about in the Christian Bible. And the Sukha Shanti that Ramesh Balsekar and other sages have mentioned in the Advaitic tradition. Sukha Shanti meaning ultimate peace or divine peace or supreme peace. This is the happiness that we're going for, and it's beyond the regular dualities of happiness and sadness, joy and anger, etc., etc. It's beyond those. It's deeper than those. That's what we're wishing for ourselves and for others with the four immeasurables. The second of the four measurables is, may you be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. It's really saying the same thing. If you're liberated from suffering, then you're at peace. And if you're at peace, then you're in the Ananda state, which some people translate as bliss and some people translate as happiness. So how do we get there? Okay, well, we at the Natural Right Sangha believe that following the precepts is one very good way to get closer to this more of the time, if not to be there all the time, which is a big thing. Okay, that's an ultimate accomplishment, to be there more and more. Okay, the precepts are very helpful, and other things are very helpful too. We mentioned Shravana, Manana, and Nididasana with the words of great true teachers. If you live by these precepts and you do Shravana, Manana, and Nididasana with the teachings of great and true teachers, these four immeasurables are there for you. Even Sri Ramana Maharshi said, you can get there in this life. That should be the best encouraging thing you've heard in a long time, or ever. It certainly was for me when I heard it. I said, even me? Now, the third one is to never be separate from the happiness that is free of sorrow. Well, that happiness that is free of sorrow is, again, the same thing. It's the Ananda we're talking about. And the fourth one, to reside in equanimity, free of attachment and aversion. And some translations say rest in equanimity, free of attachment and aversion. I say reside because I prefer that interpretation, because then you're always residing, but you're not always resting. So I want you to always have equanimity, free of attachment and aversion. It's a picky thing, probably no big deal, but that's why I chose that interpretation of the fourth one. But to reside in equanimity, free of attachment and aversion. Well, equanimity is, again, that peace. We are not subject to the dualities of love and hate, peace and war, old and young, healthy and sick, happy and sad. That's all. It's all sort of happening, but you're also not of it anymore. And again, that's a pretty high place, but that's what we're aiming at. Yeah. Now, reside in equanimity, free of attachment and aversion. Okay. Attachment and aversion are huge things. We talked about them a little bit before, but attachments are things you want. I want more money. Oh man, I'd love to have her as my girlfriend. Yeah. Or, oh geez, I'd love to have that house. Yeah. I want to have that job. I want to have that amount of money. I want to drive that car. I want to, oh God, this hurts. I want to be rid of this. Okay, now I want to be pain-free. I want to be rid of this. That's also an aversion. I don't want pain. I don't want old age. I don't want poverty. I don't want sickness. I am averse to these things. So what do? We spend our lives trying to bring in the things we like and to avert and send away and stay away and keep away and stop the things we don't. And this is where dissatisfaction sets in. Dissatisfactoriness with life. Life is dissatisfactory. It's often translated as life is suffering. But the dissatisfaction includes everything from annoyance to grief. So I'll go with that word. Now, I've studied a lot. I've looked at the deepest texts of every type of Buddhism, and I've compared them to what I consider to be the best types of Hinduism, And then I've looked at Christianity and I've looked at other faiths. And I come to the place where basically none of them would disagree with these three things. In fact, all of the great sages would probably agree with them. And that's it. If you get attached to anything in this world, you're going to be hurting. You're going to feel pain. You're going to feel unhappy. You will be displeased in some way because everything here changes. Okay. The second thing they'll tell you is that everything here does change. Okay. Everything changes, no doubt about it. And the third thing they tell you is the hardest thing to tell you, and that is that you and this whole place, this whole world, are nothing but the relative aspect of all that is. It's hard to put into words, but they all come to the same agreements at the end. And we'll talk a lot more about this, and hopefully I'll be more eloquent in explaining it. Hell, sometimes I can't even say Sat Chit Ananda right and explain it correctly. But I will go a lot more into this. And if you have particular questions, please send them. But we're not Buddhist, we're not Christian, we're not Advaita, we're not any of those things. But we're all of them at the same time. Truth is truth is truth. So if there is a truth, it is the truth. And all of the different religions and everything are just arguing about aspects of it. And rather than argue about aspects, we at the Natural Right Sangha want to focus on the big picture, which is, what is this truth that is true for everybody and everything, that doesn't change, that isn't impermanent? It's the Turiya I mentioned last week, Turiya. It's the awareness that is at the base of everything in our lives, of our waking state, our sleeping state, our dreaming while asleep state. It's the base upon which those three live, so to speak. Although they're like a ripple in the ocean. They live and then they subside, and then this is gone, but the Turiya is still there. And for a while, this ripple thinks it's different and special and individual. Right. But look at the ocean. You forget you're part of that. No, that's just an analogy. It's just a concept. And everything in our language is just analogies and concepts. It's what we have to work with until we don't. Until we get past them. And then guess what? People like Ramana Maharshi got past it, and then they had to come back and use it all the time because it was the only way they could communicate with other so-called people on the planet. So, like David Godman said, Ramana didn't speak from where he was at. He spoke so people would understand him. I'm paraphrasing there, but basically that's what he said. Okay, so let's end today's meeting with the four immeasurables. And we'll do them the same as last week this time. And I think you'll begin to notice that it's almost better when we do it for other people than ourselves, but still, we'll start with I this week. So I like to do it in the Namaste or Namaskar position. So please repeat after me, each one of the four measurables. May I have happiness and the causes of happiness. May I be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May I never be separate from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May I reside in equanimity, free of attachment and aversion. Okay, we're going to do it one more time. And this time I'd like you to select some people or a person. Maybe you love them. Maybe they're not your favorite. Maybe they're someone who messed you up in the past, in the world, in the duality, in Maya and samsara. Maybe there's someone you care about more than anybody else, or maybe all of them. So we'll call it you, and it can be you singular or you plural. So if we were in the South, we'd say y'all, but we won't say y'all. We'll just say you. Okay, so pick your people, look them in the eyes, and may you have happiness and the causes of happiness. May you be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May you never be separate from the happiness that is free of sorrow. May you reside in equanimity, free of attachment and aversion. Well, thank you for being here at the Sunday, July 12th weekly meeting of the Natural Rights Sangha. If you haven't joined, you're welcome to. It's free. All you have to do is promise to keep the precepts as best you can. We're not perfect. It won't happen immediately that you're doing it perfectly. But hey, thank you for being here, and hopefully see you next week.